and that it is a common sense to anybody that these islands and this reef so close to the Philippines ought to belong to the Philippines. And so there we are. On 22nd of January of this year, the Philippines submitted this to arbitration under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And so that's the very brief scene setter of the problem that we've got in both of these areas. So I think the question that I want to just touch on very briefly here, the two questions, the first one being, what role will the law play in this dispute? The Philippines really had reached wit's end, and they had tried within ASEAN and also bilaterally to reach some solutions with the Chinese, and that wasn't working out very well for them. So they submitted this to arbitration under the Law of the Sea Convention. China and the Philippines are both members of the convention. And in very brief terms, both are bound by the terms of the convention to participate in arbitration, with one significant caveat, which is that the Law of the Sea Convention allows parties to opt out if it involves a sovereignty dispute or a maritime boundary dispute. And that becomes the central issue in this arbitration, is whether or not the arbitral tribunal, once it is appointed, will decide that it has jurisdiction over this dispute. One commentator who follows these issues closely on one of the international law blogs has said that China's refusal to participate in the arbitration, which China has recently declared that it will not participate, will deal a crushing and perhaps fatal blow to the United Nations Law of the Sea dispute resolution processes. I personally think that's a little overheated and a little overdrawn. I actually think that there are a number of scenarios here where the rule of law in some way gets affirmed by this process. The arbitral tribunal may find that it has no jurisdiction and that China's claims are consistent with the Law of the Sea Convention. It might find that it has jurisdiction and rule for China. It might find that it has jurisdiction and rule for the Philippines, and China, in some subtle, face-saving way, might choose to acknowledge that in some way and work with the Philippines on that. There is a fourth possibility, which is probably the one that people are most focused on and perhaps the most ominous, which would be that the tribunal finds it has jurisdiction, rules against China, and China chooses to ignore it. In some superficial way bearing resemblance to our own experience in the Nicaragua case a few decades ago. So hard to know where that one is going. It points out, though, the fundamental challenge with